Thank you, Uma. First of all, I wanted to say about the to-do list that hits me home. I don't think there's ever a day that go by that I'm like, okay, I didn't do anything and I did do stuff, but it's this constant feeling that you're not fulfilling your to-do list. So that completely resonate. Hey everyone, I'm Kevin Cohen. I used to work in Microsoft. That's how I met Uma there. Great times. I spent 7 years in Microsoft building AI and big data applications. And the story that I have today is how I changed from Microsoft to startups and some lessons along the way of failing, actually 3 times to be exact, before where we are today. So a lot of people ask me when they're seeing today everything that we've built with Vetrec, my current company, it's, oh, wow, what a success overnight. All of a sudden, you have all of these people working with you and all of these customers. And it's not overnight. We've been 1.5 years working on this and we failed 3 times before doing this. But always people like try to see the latest and most shiny thing, similar to the famous startups as well. Slack, for example. Oh, wow, what a great company. I don't know if, but Slack spent 3 years building something completely different in which they were not even doing like chat related stuff, and then they did this chat interface. So there's a lot of like how this bias that we have when we look at companies and we think that it's overnight success, but it isn't. I'm sure the same with Uma and a bunch of people here. So I wanted to say the story of me and my co-founder leaving Microsoft and deciding to go into the startup space. It was around the time that ChatGPT came out. And the first thing that my co-founder says, he's also from ex-Microsoft, of course. And he said, look, like we should apply to Y Combinator. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Y Combinator, but it's this famous accelerator program in the United States, right? And the first thing that I said is, why are we going to do that? We shouldn't. Let's not waste our time. And he said, why would you not? What is the worst that can happen? You're going to spend 1 hour doing an application? Let's just do it. And bear in mind, when we applied to Y Combinator, we didn't even have a strong idea. We were thinking on using ChatGPT to help restaurants. Okay, so keep track of all of the ideas that I'm telling you of so that you see where we landed. It turns out that we got accepted into Y Combinator. And that was my first lesson, because I told my co-founder, I can't believe that we did this. And I said, let's not do it. Let's not do it, for no reason at all. And he's the one that pushed us to be like, look, what's the worst that can happen? And so we got into Y Combinator, and the Y Combinator team actually told us, look, like you guys have great energy, but I don't know if this idea of like restaurants with AI is the right thing. And of course we said, nah, they don't know anything. Let's continue our idea. So we moved to San Francisco for 3 months. We moved to San Francisco. We lived in an apartment, me and my co-founder together, sharing a bathroom. And we both have spouses. Like we're used to like not living in this confinement, like me and my co-founder in a small apartment in San Francisco. And we started building this AI for restaurants. 3 weeks after we stopped, we said, this is not going to work. The Y Combinator guys were right. We don't see any value that we're providing to the actual restaurants. There's not really a big problem here. Let's change the idea. So we changed the first time the idea, and then we started building developer tools for people building with AI. We spent 6 months, 3 months living in San Francisco together, facing 18-hour work days, almost not going out. And we had one customer at the end of the 6 months. I always tell people like, yeah, Y Combinator is great and whatnot, but I think the biggest thing of Y Combinator is a mental health test. If you're able to come out alive of that thing and energized, you'll have higher chances of building a successful startup later on. It hit us pretty hard. Like we fought a lot. We had lots of discussions. Why? Because we were building something, again, that we weren't really seeing any good traction. People were not loving it. They were telling us that we were doing too many things instead of just one thing. There was a lot of discussion, and all of these things, tension happen because you don't have a clear path. And the number one reason for why startups fail is because their co-founders or their business partners do not get along well. And we got to a point where we were almost like breaking out. We were not talking to each other as much. We were like missing things, not communicating stuff. And that really hurt us. Until we were around October, November in Seattle. I just moved to South Florida. I was telling Prasoon and the folks here, but we were in Seattle, and we said, look, like we have grit. Above all, we have grit and we have resilience, and now's not the time to quit. We still have the investment from Y Combinator. Let's go and figure it out. And that's what we did, honestly. It's not so much, I just want you guys to hear the story and see how it can be applied to your own lives and to your own stories. But it's not that we did something specific. It's just a matter of having this mindset of like grit and resilience to continue going. We literally went to the whiteboard. Okay, after 6 months living together, going through 3 different ideas, we went to the whiteboard and literally said, what should we build? And it's hard after you're 6, 7 months building something and like constantly over seeing your peers in Y Combinator raise money, have these customers, and you're like, hey, so how's it going, Kevin? And you're like, we're still figuring it out, still figuring it out, still figuring it out. We repeated that for 100 times until finally I have two dogs. I would love to show them. One of them is here. The other one is in the sofa. But I have two dogs. And about the time that I was having my second dog, I went to the vet. And that's the story of how VetRec got started. I saw how veterinarians were struggling with medical records. And when you're building a startup, you're always looking at things that happen, like why is that chair there? What is that table there? You're trying to come up with something, especially when you're in the ideation phase. And it took a lot of grit. We knocked on a lot of veterinarian clinic doors in Seattle, and we finally built a product that is helping veterinarians be less stressed and less burnt out by helping them generate medical records. And we're now a 13 people team and growing. And people think that we hired 13 people yesterday, and it's no, and it took us 1.5 years. So that's a little bit of the